Okay, so the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, two hungry wolves let loose among sheep are not more harmful than a person craving after wealth and status is to his religion or his deen. What is the main concept, the fiqh of the hadith, the main concept that this hadith is trying to convey? The main concept.
Seeking wealth,
Seeking wealth and status can cause you to lose your deen. Okay? Anyone else? Looking at the text in front of you, what would you, if you had to sift through all of this and pull out the main concept, what would it be?
Put religion first.
Huh?
Put religion first.
Put religion first?
That the road to money doesn't include religion, so if you're taking actions towards, making money and working harder or something like that, then it's taken away from it. So I actions would work.
So basically what she said, craving wealth and status can destroy your religion. Okay. I'm looking for concepts supposed to be like 2 or 3 words just to sum everything up.
It's more reward in your religion than in wealth.
More reward in your religion than wealth.
Don't chase wealth.
Don't chase wealth? Is that what the hadith is saying? Don't chase wealth?
No, you have wealth, but you have to balance. You have to have a balance. Because wealth, if you consume yourself with wealth, it can corrupt you because you leave everything else off.
So the hadith is not saying don't pursue wealth.
It's not saying that. It's saying craving wealth is harmful to your religion, then why would you crave wealth?
Okay, so look at the wording. He said craving. There's a desire there.
Desire is destructive to your being.
Okay, so she broadened it because the Prophet only used wealth and status, but craving after anything could destroy your deen. Very broader brush that she. Okay, so we're on to something. Let's keep going. Let's build off of that. Sister Erica drives us home every time. Come on, drive us home. Take us home. Protect somebody online said protect your deen. Okay.
The same way that you would chase for the wealth or the status, like you should chase for the deen.
Chase your deen the same way that you chase after wealth and status. Okay. So the main concept of this hadith is that craving wealth and status for the wrong reasons will destroy your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because craving after wealth and status, as we're going to see, if you're using it in the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. Pay attention to his wording. He said, 2 hungry wolves let loose. He's giving you the metaphor here so you can envision. This is another teaching strategy of the Prophet ﷺ to use metaphors, parables, so that you can envision what he's saying, right? And sometimes we talk to our children and we convey to them a concept, but they can't see it. We're talking to one another as husband and wife, and sometimes we're trying to convey something and the person can't see it. So you might use a metaphor or a parable to bring them closer to understanding what it is you're trying to say. All right? So it's very important, for us to begin to incorporate that in our methods of teaching, whether it's spouses, husband and wife, one to another, or whether it's parents with their children, or whether it is out and about. Everybody don't understand or don't value words like that. Some people are very literal, so when you say things to them, they interpret it through this literal process they have in their minds, and it's like they exaggerate everything that you say beyond what it is you're trying to say, right? And then some people, because maybe they're not necessarily, book smart in that sense, in that they understand language and how it functions. They understand, context and how it functions. They just hear words. That's it. They just hear what you're saying. And they look at your body motions and they try to put one with the other to try to make out what it is you're trying to say. So sometimes metaphors, parables, giving examples, helps people to come closer to what you're trying to say. So if you're in a conversation with someone and you're explaining something and they're like, I don't get what you're trying to say. Okay, let me give you an example. Now it's like, okay, now I get it. Now I get it. Okay? So the Prophet ﷺ said, 2 hungry wolves let loose among sheep are not more harmful than a person craving after wealth and status is to his religion. So if he's craving wealth and status and is harming his religion, that means he's craving wealth and status not for religion. Meaning, if a person is craving wealth and status to benefit Islam, to be a benefit for deen, then there's nothing wrong with that. You guys get that? Are you following me? How I pulled that out of that? Huh? That if you're craving wealth and status for the benefit of the religion, for the benefit of your deen, then that should not be harmful to your deen because you're doing it for your deen. You're not craving wealth and status. It's like a person who walked by and the man said that if I had his wealth, I would give sadaqah like he gives sadaqah. The Prophet said, both of you, antuma fil ajri sawa, you get the same reward as he does. Although you're broken, he's rich. Why? Because you had the desire to do what he does with his wealth. That's a craving for wealth. He said, if I had the same amount of money that he had, I would give sadaqah like he gives sadaqah. That's a craving after wealth. But it's craving after wealth for deen, for religion. Some of us, we go to the opposite extreme when it comes to wealth. Wealth in the Muslim community, especially amongst African Americans, it's a very taboo subject. Because when we talk about money in terms of giving sadaqah and giving zakat and things like that, but we don't talk about having wealth for our own person because it's almost like taboo in the black Muslim community to have wealth for yourself. So when a person pulls up in front of the masjid with a nice car, it's like, oh, you too into the dunya, right? So you're almost ashamed for having nice things coming around, other Muslims. You're not allowed to have nice things. You're not allowed to have, nice vehicle or live in a nice home. You invite someone to your house and they looking at your house and you're like, wow, man, automatically assuming you got it on riba, on interest, automatically, this is where all these thoughts come from. It's like they looking at your house like, a'udhu billah. I know he paid, paying interest on this joint, you know what I mean? And even if a person is, even if that's not your place to judge me, that's not your place. Because how something started off doesn't necessarily mean that that's how it's going to end. Maybe I started off in interest at a time when I was a new Muslim. I didn't know any better, right? And I'm kind of working my way through that with the investors or the bank or however I'm working my way out of that. But maybe I did it at a time when I was ignorant. I didn't know any better. And here you come, I invite you into my home, and now you're being judgmental of me for a decision that I made when I didn't know any better. Same thing as I said on Wednesday with Musa and Fir'aun. Fir'aun said, you killed the man. And Musa said, I did it at a time when I was ignorant. I didn't know any better. I made tawbah to Allah. That's not your place to judge me. That my past is between me and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have nothing to do with that. So wealth in the African American community is a very taboo subject, man. We have a very unhealthy relationship with money. Very unhealthy. Yes, and this also in regards to desire. So the main concept of this hadith is that craving wealth and status for reasons other than those connected to your deen will destroy your deen. Not just wealth and status, but craving anything or anyone that is not going to be beneficial to your deen will be destructive to your deen. The Prophet ﷺ said that if a man comes to you asking for your daughter's hand in marriage and you're pleased with what? His character and his deen, marry him. You're craving this person for their deen. The Prophet ﷺ said a woman is married for 4 reasons: for her wealth, for her beauty, for her social status, family status in the community. He said, but choose the woman that has deen. So as long as it is connected to deen, it should not be harmful to deen. But you're craving something that is not beneficial for your religion, then it's going to destroy or have an impact on your religion. So that's the main concept of the hadith. Ibn Taymiyyah, I put on the board, he said there are 4 types of people with respect to wealth and status. Ibn Taymiyyah said, أقسام الناس في طلب الجاه والمال في الحديث أربع. He said, commenting on this particular hadith, he said, there are 4 types of people with respect to craving wealth and status that he deducted from this particular hadith. The first are those who desire superiority over people and to cause corruption. They want both. They want the wealth because they want superiority, and they want status because they're going to create corruption. Right? He said, Al-Qism al-Awwal yuridun al-ulu ala al-nas wal-fasad fil ard. They desire in their craving of wealth and status, superiority and corruption. That is what their sole intention is. Right? By disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, and these are the people like muluk wa ru'asa. These are like kings, presidents, prime ministers, leaders. These people who go after wealth and status to create corruption and have superiority over people. And he said the example of this is found in Surah Al-Qasas, Surah number 28, Ayat 4. Surah 28, Ayat 4. I'll put that on the board. Surah 28, Ayat 4. So for number 1. Can someone pull that ayah up on their phone real quick and read it? Surah 28, Ayat 4. Surah 28, Ayat 4. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says what about Fir'aun? Just go to Google real quick and type Surah 28, Ayat 4.
Indeed, Pharaoh exalted himself in the land and made its people into factions, oppressing a sector among them, slaughtering their newborn sons and keeping their females alive. Indeed, he was of the corruptors.
Okay, so where at in that ayat do we see the craving of wealth and status for superiority and to create corruption? It's very important for us to be able to make extractions from the Quran. When we read the ayat, extract the point that I'm trying to make. Where in this ayat do we see superiority over people and corruption? He exalts himself in the earth, right? And what does Allah say at the end of the ayat? He was of those who were corrupt. See that? So this is very important for us to learn how to extract, make deductions from the Quran. So when a person puts forth a concept, and then he says this ayat goes with that concept, it's your responsibility to go into that ayat and be able to pull that concept out. All right? So the key words in this are superiority and corruption. Allah says, "Inna Fir'aun ala fil ard." Fir'aun, he exalted himself in the earth. And at the end of the ayat, he said, "Innahu kana min al-mufsidin." Indeed, he was amongst those who were corrupt or caused corruption. All right, so this is one example of people who desire. As you know how you have that coworker that wants that position so bad because they are tired having the entry level position, and they desire that, the supervisor position, right? Not because they want to make more money. They want more money, but they also want to show everybody else that treated them badly. All right, these are those type of people. When they get in that position, they make your life a living hell.
Yeah.
And they begin to change all of the previous policies that were related to that particular position, right? This is the superiority and corruption. Even though everything is flowing smoothly, you still got to go in and change because it has to fit, These are these type of people, man. It's very, very important. Sometimes this happens in marriage. Yes, I'm going to go there. This happens in marriages where one spouse might be making more money than the other spouse, and then the other one loses a job or quits or whatever, and now the other one is making more money, but he or she is now exalting themselves over you, constantly throwing in your face how much more they make than you did, how many bills they pay with their money more than you do, right? And it creates corruption in the marriage because now this person has now exalted themselves to a position where they are now superior than you are, and it corrupts the marriage. It happens. People, we have to learn how to tame that desire. We have to learn how to make sure that our intentions are pure for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ikhlas, very, very important. And you can see that very clearly, very clearly. Number two, the type of person, with four types of people with respect to wealth and status. Number two, those who desire corruption, not necessarily superiority. They don't want to be superior, but through their craving of wealth or wealth and status, they create corruption. And he said an example of this is like people who steal. People who steal, they desire wealth. They don't necessarily want superiority. They don't want to be above anybody, but they steal and they, and then criminals, mujrimun, those who are criminals and do criminal acts. They don't necessarily want superiority, but they create corruption by way of their pursuit of wealth and status. Guys, follow me? The third, he said, yuridul ulu bila fasad. He said the third, and I want you guys to pay attention to this one. The third are those who desire superiority, not corruption. They want to be superior more than everyone else. They don't necessarily want to create corruption, even if their seeking superiority actually creates corruption. And Ibn Taymiyyah said these are the people كَالَّذِينَ عِنْدَهُمْ دِينٌ يُرِيدُونَ أَنْ يَعْلُوا عَلَى غَيْرِهِمْ مِنَ النَّاسِ. He said these are the people, religious people, who want to be superior to everyone else. They don't necessarily want to create corruption, but they want to appear to be superior than others. I'm Salafi, you're not. I'm on the haq, you're not. You want to elevate yourself above everybody else. Instead of saying, alhamdulillah, I believe that I'm on the haq. I believe that I have the truth with me. And I want nothing more than to share that with everyone else, to have everyone else see the religion as I've found it, or see it as I see it. Right? Not the people who want to see themselves to be above others. Yes. Is there? There was no online. There's no online questions. If it is, it didn't come up. I don't know. Okay. If you guys online have any questions, can you send it? Maybe refresh your browser or something, because it's not coming up here. Okay, so those are people who desire superiority, not necessarily corruption, but in their pursuit of being superior, they actually end up creating corruption. How? How does a person who seeks to be superior with their religion create corruption?
Does he give out false information?
No, not necessarily.
Can be oppressive.
They can be oppressive. How? Just give me an example of how a person can seek to be superior over others using religion as the basis of that, and how that can create corruption. You said to be.
You said like a husband and wife, like say if the person whoever makes more money is saying like, well, I make more money, I'm paying more bills, like you keep saying it over and over again, that could be an oppression.
It can be an oppression. Okay. Yes. Absolutely.
The other thing is that it's like it's left. It's more than one. Just because you think it's this opinion, it's other opinion as well that is not bid'ah or haram.
Okay.
So it's more than one way to view something that is halal.
So you basically become dismissive of a broader interpretation of Islam. So it becomes very narrow. So it's like, this is my cookie cut, version of Islam, and I'm going to fit everybody into that. And in doing that, you are creating corruption. If you found what you believe is the truth, because truth is in the eye of the beholder, that's your truth, right? Then praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the truth that you believe that you found, and try to share that in a merciful way with other people, opposed to trying to force everyone into this cookie cut interpretation of Islam that you have. So someone said, because they have to do corrupt things in order to get there. That's another way of looking at it. I mean, for people who are religious, I don't think they necessarily do corrupt things to get to that point. But, they can become extreme. They can become extreme, forgetting that everyone else may not be where you are. So that's, he said, كَأَهْلُ like people of religion, yuriduna and ya'lu ala ghayrihim min nas, who want to put themselves above other people, who want to seem to be more religious, more spiritual than everyone else. So it's a dismissive element there.
Isn't it like people like deviate or create bid'ah, like when they choose superiority in a religion where they go and they just try to deviate.
That's another way of people deviating from the pure teachings of Islam and trying to have this superior place over the rest, and they begin to invent things in the religion that makes them appear to be absolutely. There were, for example, I remember the scholar, Sheikh Salih Suhaimi, was one of our teachers, a professor in Islamic University, and he said that in Medina there was a Sufi sheikh that was in Medina, and what people would do, he had a seat in the haram, and he used to go like in the corner somewhere and teach his little followers, and he would send some of the people sitting with him to go get cups of Zamzam water, and they would bring the cups of Zamzam water back, and he would urinate in the Zamzam water, and they would drink it, because he believed that his urine was mubarak, it was blessed. It was blessed. And I mean, when the government found out that he was doing this or whatever, and they have some very, these are the more extreme Sufis. These are not, some of the people that we are familiar with here in America who, are taking a more intellectual approach, but it's still Sufism. We can see it from afar. However, this is a more extreme version of Sufism, right? Where some of their scholars believe that they don't even have to pray. They don't have to fast. They are exempt from these things. All right, so this is seeking superiority and also creating corruption at the same time. The last category are those who desire neither. They crave wealth and status, but they don't desire superiority or corruption. And these are the people of Jannah, Ahlul Jannah. These are the people, Ahlul Jannah, alladhina la yuriduna uluwan fil ardi wala fasada. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that this is the home of the hereafter that we have made for those who do not seek superiority in the earth nor corruption. And this is actually for Ahlul Deen, Ahlul Al-Jannah, the people of paradise. That ayat, can someone find that ayat? Allah says, this is the home of the hereafter. If you type in Google, Quran verse, this is the home of the hereafter. We have prepared for those, and the verse should just come up. I want to make sure that I write the verse and give you that verse. They don't desire superiority nor corruption in the earth. Anyone? This is the home of the hereafter that we have prepared. You got it? Come on, guys. You should be quick.
The Wi-Fi is terrible.
I don't want to stop my phone because it's recording. Anyone online, can you go on to Google and find the ayat? The ayat is, this is the home of the hereafter that we have prepared for those who do not seek superiority nor corruption.
$28.83.
2883. Same Surah Al-Qasas. 2883. Okay, can you read it for me, please? 2883. Read it for me, please, Sister Erica. Do you have it?
Hold on, I'm trying to go ahead.
As for that future,
Uh-huh.
we decided to those who have no desire to exalt themselves in the earth, nor to make mischief, and good ends for those who guard against evil.
Right, there you go. So the last category, this is important because all of this is going to be on your exam. Absolutely. I might say, for example, Ibn Taymiyyah said, with respect to wealth and status, people are 4 categories. And one of the categories is those who desire neither corruption or superiority. Who are these people and what is the verse? So if you take notes, some of the tests, some of the quiz, you will have another quiz before we have the midterm. All right. And I will allow you to use your notes. So if you took notes, then alhamdulillah, will allow you to use your notes. Or you can be smart about it and archive every class by recording it on your phone and just put class 1, class 2, just archive everything, and you don't have to write down anything. Okay, so Surah 28, Ayat 3, Allah says, 83, sorry. 28, 83, تِلْكَ الدَّارُ الْآخِرَةُ نَجْعَلَهَا لِلَّذِينَ لَا يُرِيدُونَ عُلُوًّا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَلَا فَسَادًا. That this is the home of the hereafter that we have prepared for those who do not wish superiority in the earth, nor do they wish corruption. Okay? So, really quick before we conclude, let me just go through 5 of the general lessons from this hadith. I'm going to let you call it out, and then I'll let you know whether or not what you say is consistent with what I have. Do the people of Jannah crave wealth and status but do not desire superiority or status? Yes. Yes. They seek wealth. Don't you, as a Muslim, don't you crave wealth? You don't get up and go to work every day? For what? But what do you crave wealth for? To take care of your family? That's all part of deen. Taking care of your family, fulfilling your responsibility to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to your family. All right, so our craving of wealth is not for reasons that would put us in that category. But yes, we do. Do we seek status? How? You seek status? Go ahead, talk about it. Tell me.
You say, do we seek status in religion or just in life?
Just answer the question.
In life, we seek status. We want to be the best at our job. We want to get promotions. We want to do things that's going to make it easier for us and make it easier for our children. So we do seek status.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And even greater than that, we seek a status with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Are we not competing with one another to get to a place? I mean, do you want to get into the same place as Jannah as your spouse, or do you want to go as high as you possibly can? Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't think there's, if you are in competition, no two people want to be in the same place in Jannah unless it's Firdaus, the highest place. If you seeking mediocrity in your deen, I'm sorry, I ain't with you on that. I love you, but I'm not on that. And perhaps Allah will have mercy upon you if Allah gives me a higher place in Jannah than He gives to you and allow you to come with me. But I'm not seeking to be in, your mediocrity. I'm sorry. We are seeking status. We're seeking status with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why do we stay away from haram? Why do we do what we are commanded to do unless we are seeking a status with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Absolutely. We seek wealth and we seek status. We crave wealth, we crave status, but for a different reason than what the Prophet ﷺ is talking about in this hadith. Every single one of us should be craving to have a status with Allah. You should be in your job. Are you just content unless you are a supervisor in the highest position in your job? If you are at an entry level, are you not craving to be in a higher position? Absolutely. Are you okay with making $30,000, $32,000 a year? You okay with that? Or are you seeking to be in a higher position so you can make more money? So you can put away something more, so you can purchase the house that you've been desiring for so long? Absolutely. We're craving wealth and status every day, but we're doing it for reasons that are not mentioned and as the Prophet ﷺ described the individual in this particular hadith. So yes, there is a craving. There's a quote someone told me, someone who was told me not to bite off more than I can chew. I said, I'd rather choke on greatness than nibble on mediocrity. Absolutely. Someone said, don't bite off more than what you can chew. She said, I would rather choke on greatness than to nibble on mediocrity. Absolutely. 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 Perfect. Okay, so some of the general lessons of this hadith. What can we pull out that we can practice on a day-to-day basis based upon this hadith? General life lessons from this hadith.
Make sure your intentions are pure and for the sake of Allah and not for mankind.
Where did you get that from in this hadith? Because if you throw something out there, I'm going to ask you where you got it from.
That's just the way I looked at it, because I went over it last night.
Okay.
I just felt like it was just saying that in chasing the wealth, if you chase the wealth, you should chase it to be pleasing for your Lord and not for mankind.
Okay.
In other words, just do don't do things to be seen among mankind, but
There you go. And that's exactly what I have. That this hadith is directing us to make sure that we purify our intentions. That when we seek status, wealth, it should be done with the purest of intentions. The purest of intentions, and not for worldly gain like superiority and corruption. Right? Absolutely. Number two, we talked about this before the break, and that's the socio-cultural context. The Prophet ﷺ was a shepherd in his youth, and he said that there was no prophet before me except that he used to herd sheep. So all of the prophets, alayhim assalam, all of them before him were shepherds. So a lot of the Prophet ﷺ's references were related to this particular lifestyle. In one hadith he said, all of you are shepherds and all of you are responsible for your flock. In another hadith he said that there's no shepherd who Allah makes responsible over a group of people and he fails to do right by them except that he will not smell the fragrance of Jannah. And the fragrance of Jannah can be smelled from such and such distance. And one narration he said over a distance of 70 years. So a lot of his references are related to shepherds and flocks and things like this because that was his socio-cultural context. And it's very important for us to understand this as it relates to the speech of the Prophet ﷺ. All right? Allah says in the Quran, very important ayah, Allah says, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِن رَسُولٍ إِلَّا بِلِسَانِ قَوْمِهِ لِيُبَيِّنَ لَهُمْ. And we did not send a prophet, all right? We never sent a prophet except in the tongue of his people so that he can clarify to them. Allah, why did he say in the tongue of his people instead of in the language of his people? Allah could have said lugha. The word for language in Arabic is lugha. But Allah said that we did not send a prophet except bilisani qawmi, in the tongue of his people. Why did Allah use tongue instead of using the language?
Because they use more than words to convey messages, so it's kind of cultural in addition to like the language.
Certain people relate to certain, like with us, we can relate in the language that we can talk to, so like Spanish people relate to whatever, how they lingo, how they speak, how they tongue, how they speak.
Hispanics. He said Spanish people.
Latin people.
Okay. A little deeper. Go ahead, Sheikh.
It's all different. In tribes, that's what they talk about tribes, I believe, man. That he created the human being, he created us all as one humanity. But we all speak in different tongues. We live in different time zones, like we live here in America. Some people live, overseas. We don't speak in the same tongue. That's why it's saying, I don't know how to speak
Spanish. Somebody said tongue indicates origin. You guys are dancing around it.
Maybe
Missing.
the same thing he believes.
Huh?
Maybe the people that believes the same thing he believes.
because he's among us, so you accept what he said because he's among the people.
He said, I did not send a messenger except in the tongue of his people. And he said tongue and he didn't say language.
So it's not restricted, like it's not restricted to one people where it's like the messages for.
Damn, I thought you were going somewhere. You was.
Maybe tongue sounds closer than just saying language.
So how about
The word
the
is
vein?
the tongue based on the culture.
There you go. Say it again, please. Because tongue is a more broader, right, understanding than language. Language is very restricted. We understand when you say you speak the same language, that means that she can be African American and speak Spanish, right? She speaks the same language as someone who's Hispanic. Does that mean that they are from the same culture? No. When Allah said that we did not send a prophet except in the tongue of his people, tongue is inclusive of culture. There's a cultural context to all of our interpretation of Islam. All right. So yes, that's number 2. That's number 2. So the importance of understanding the socio-cultural context. Socio-cultural context. So when we see hadith or we read things the Prophet ﷺ said, we should always look for the socio-cultural context. In this hadith, he used an example, a metaphor of wolves eating sheep to bring us to understand how dangerous craving wealth and status is to our religion. There's a socio-cultural context here in this speech and many of his narrations. For example, the Prophet ﷺ said, لَأَنْ يَهْدِيَ اللَّهُ بِكَ رَجُلًا وَاحِدًا خَيْرٌ لَكَ مِنْ حُمْرِ النِّعَمِ. That if Allah was to guide by your hands one person, it would be better than what? It would be better for you than red camels. حُمْرِ النِّعَمِ, red camels. Has anyone in here ever seen a camel up close in person? Anyone ever seen a red camel? I've never seen a red camel. Sorry. I couldn't even begin to envision what the Prophet ﷺ is talking about. He said, if Allah was to guide by your hands one person, it would be better for you than red camels. What's the socio-cultural context here? We don't know because we're not nomads. We don't live in the desert. We don't understand what he's trying to convey. The connection he's trying to make by Allah guiding someone by your hand and having a red camel. What is the significance of having a red camel? It means nothing in our culture. In their culture, it meant everything. Understand? It meant everything. So when Allah said that we did not send a prophet or messenger except in the tongue of his people, he's talking something deeper than just language. Meaning, when you are learning someone's language, you are learning someone's culture. So when we're learning Arabic, which is why many people fail at learning the Arabic language, because you're just trying to learn a language. You're not understanding a culture that is attached to that language. And within that culture, there's other subcultures within that culture that we call Arab. They're not all the same. Even in Saudi Arabia, people from Riyadh, very different from people in Medina. People in Jeddah, very different from the people in Ta'if. They're different. They speak different dialects. People from Saudi Arabia, different from people from Yemen. Yemenis are a totally different breed of Arabs. People from Lebanon, people from Syria, all of them speak a different dialect of Arabic. They all understand each other, but they all have a different culture. Very different culture. African Americans, we're the same thing. The Arab may learn English, and they speak English, and we have that in common. They do not understand American culture, many of them, especially first generation. Those of their children who have been born into American culture, they're Americans, even though their origin is Arab. They're Americans. But their parents, many of them, there's a big break in the communication because their children are Americans while they are Pakistani, Arab, wherever they come from. They don't understand. They don't understand because there's a whole culture that is connected to language. So Allah used the broader sense of the word language by saying the tongue, because tongue, it includes the culture of the person. So it's very important that we understand the importance of socio-cultural context, right? So that we can understand what the Prophet ﷺ is actually trying to say, right? Even some of the phrases, the words that he used. I'll give you an example. It wasn't the Prophet ﷺ's behavior to use vulgar language. So the hadith of the guy, Ma'iz, who committed adultery, right? He came to the Prophet ﷺ while he was sitting in the masjid and he said, "O Messenger of Allah, I committed adultery." The Prophet asked him, "Do you even know what you're saying?" Right? The Prophet wanted to make sure that before I establish the Islamic ruling on you by taking your life, I have to be clear that you understand what you're saying. Right? It's just like one of your child, Allah forbid, come to you and say, "I was raped by my teacher." And you want to know what happened. What did he do? How did he touch you? What you want details, because our interpretation of rape might be different She might have gotten that word from somewhere else and might have just, well, my teacher, touched me inappropriately. Okay, well, that's not necessarily rape. That's an inappropriate touch. But we need to make sure that we're clear about the terminologies that we're using, right? Very important. So the Prophet asked the man, do you even know what zina is? He said, it's what a man does with a woman that is not his wife, what he would do with his wife. And the Prophet ﷺ, he asked him, niktaha? Nik in the Arabic language means F-U-C-K. That wasn't the Prophet ﷺ's normal speech. He didn't normally talk like that. But why did he use such vulgar language? Because he wanted to speak to him in their culture, to understand that you and I are understanding the same thing. I'm trying to understand, you know what you're saying to me. Because that means that if, in fact, you did do this, you are going to lose your life. And he said yes. He said yes. The Prophet asked him, did your private part disappear into her private part? He said yes. He told the Sahaba, tie him down, had a ditch dug for him, buried him up to his waist in the ditch, and stoned him to death. They kept pelting him with stones, and Khalid ibn Walid couldn't take it no more. He's like, man, y'all playing, man. He grabbed a boulder and dropped it on his head. Because he felt like, you guys are slowing the process up. You're killing him twice. Just do it and get it over with. But the point that I'm making is cultural context. Making sure we understand the language that we use, right? Is very important for us to understand that. Number 3, from the benefits of the hadith, is the forbidding, chasing, or craving wealth and status for the purpose of showing off. Because superiority and corruption is connected to that. That when you're seeking wealth and status for the purpose of showing off, this is usually what it leads to. So the condemnation of showing off, riya. The word in Arabic is riya, showing off. Because when you're seeking wealth and status for the purpose of showing off, riya, this is what it leads to. So in this hadith is the condemnation of showing off, doing things to be seen. Someone said 10 red BMWs. The red camels is equivalent to 10 red BMWs. I don't know what it's equivalent to because that's not my culture. I don't understand to them how important having a red camel was. It was obviously top shelf from the camels that a person could have, but I still would never be able to understand how important that is because that's not my culture. All we're trying to do is understand what the concept that the Prophet was trying to convey to us. He used metaphors, he used parables, and our job today, 1437 years later, is to not go backwards, right, necessarily, but to stay where we are, but to understand where we are by looking backwards, right? Life is paradoxical in that you cannot live it except forward, but you can only understand it backwards. You can't understand life going forward. So the condemnation of showing off. Number 4 is also from this hadith. The general lesson is the another teaching strategy of the Prophet ﷺ was to put forth examples. Darab al-amthal. To put forth examples, parables, to use parables to explain yourself, right? And also the last benefit from this hadith is the condemnation of being stingy. Because being stingy is the result of a person craving wealth. Person doesn't crave wealth to give it away to other people. They crave it to hoard it for themselves. Right? Nobody is seeking, craving wealth so they can give it to other people. So essentially the hadith is condemning the quality of stinginess, al-bukhl wa-shuh. لأن من حرص على المال غالبا يكون بخيلا. Because most of the time people who crave wealth they are stingy people. Most of the people who crave wealth are stingy people. The Prophet ﷺ said, إِيَّاكُمْ وَالشُّحْ فَإِنَّمَا هَلَكَ مَنْ كَانَ قَبْلَكُمْ بِالشُّحْ وَأَمْرَهُمْ بِالْبُخْلِ فَبَخِلُوا. The Prophet ﷺ said, I caution you or warn you against stinginess, for indeed the people that came before you were destroyed because of stinginess. They would be stingy and then command other people to be stingy. Right? So this is very important. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah number 59, Ayat 9, وَمَن يُوقَ شُحَّ نَفْسِهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. And whoever is able to rid himself of his own, covetous desires, the things that he covets, the things that he, craves, and, if you're able to cure yourself of this, then you will be amongst those who are successful. Surah 59, Ayat 9. 59. وَمَن يُوقَ شُحَّ نَفْسِهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. Okay? So, just real quick before we conclude, text to world connections. What does this hadith or this incident remind you of? I'm hoping you guys are filling these questions out to yourself in your book. Inshallah ta'ala. Next Sunday, I want to collect your books from you. Yes, I want to see your notes. I want to see what you've been writing. Well, maybe I won't collect them, but I will take a look at them. Okay. But I would like to see how you guys are responding to these questions at the bottom, the text to world connections. What does this incident remind you of in the real world? I put how people are punished for loving something that causes them to be disobedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This reminds me in the real world, this hadith, that he said that this two hungry wolves let loose on sheep will not do more damage to them than the person craving wealth and status. And I put one of the things that this hadith reminds me of from the real world as how people ardently desire something and go after and crave something, and their love of that thing causes them to be disobedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah punishes them for it. How are the events in this story similar to the things that happen in the real world? Can anyone think of this hadith, the concept here, and what we see going on in the real world? Do you see people, craving and desiring wealth and status? And what does it do to them? What does it do? I put, Like what? There you go. That's exactly what I put. How people sell their souls for either status or wealth. And I use musicians and artists. That's what I put in my book. Absolutely. Kanye West. He said, what did he say? He said, I sold my soul to the devil. It was a terrible deal, but it came with a few toys like a Happy Meal. Absolutely. He said that in a concert. Absolutely. I sold my soul to, and look at him. Personally, I don't even think that's him anymore. I think he's been cloned. Call me a conspiracy theorist, but I think it's real. But that's not even him. The dead stare into it was just a movie that just came out, right? Get Out. I haven't seen it myself. I probably don't want to see it. But just seeing the commercial for it is Caucasians that are hypnotizing black people that come up to a particular area. And that hypnotism is real. That's real. When you look at the pictures of Kanye right now, the dead stare. He stares into the camera. It seems like there's no life in him. And it happened to many people. It happens to many people. Are they under hypnosis? Like, it's possible. MK Ultra, they have all types of drugs. I mean, my father-in-law told me a long time, never take a cup of someone who handed you something to drink and you didn't see where they poured it from. Never take a cup from. You don't know. You come in somebody's office, oh, here's a glass of water, and you just sip it. You don't know what they put in it.